Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of my InnerView Series. I am Jewel Diamond Taylor, the host since 2009, and I'm always excited when I get to bring a new topic to you. And today's topic is really something that I am learning about. I work with so many women in counseling and coaching and with my Women on the Grow tribe. It's good for me to expand my territory of knowledge. And one of our awesome sister sowers and sister friend of Women on the Grow is with me today. Welcome, 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 Stacey Bullock.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Jewel. I am so excited to talk about this topic.
Yes, I remember meeting you at a book signing, and we have been together ever since. And you are such a joy to know. And because of your background in the military and our constant conversations, I'm learning so much more about your world in the military. Where were you born, Stacey?
I was born in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah. That's my birthplace. So that's something that we have in common. And we met in California because you moved from D.C. to California, right?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I moved here April 2019.
And I remember you told me you drove all the way here.
I did. Actually, I had a co-pilot, I should say. She drove with me, so I didn't.
I remember meeting her
by myself. Yes,
I remember meeting her. So, what branch of the military were you with?
I was in the Army for 18 years.
In the Army for 18 years.
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
Was that something that you planned, or was it just like, you know what, I'm going to try something different, I need to get away? Or was that just a goal that you had in mind? Was there somebody in your family that was in the military?
Well, the second point you brought up, I needed to get away from Washington, D.C. I was not going on the right path, I'll say, and the military was my outlet, and I'll say it saved my life. My mom actually was in the military at the same time. She was in the reserves.
Oh, did you travel?
I did. My wonderful assignment that I always talk about, I lived in Sinai, Egypt, and the Red Sea was my backyard.
Red Sea?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, my goodness.
I also lived in Alaska, which was wonderful. I lived there for 5 years. So that was great in Fairbanks.
Wow, that's amazing. So there was a lot of positive outcomes from being in the military. I've spoken on many military bases, Stacey, and I was always amazed that I got invited because I have no military experience. My father, who is deceased, was an Army veteran. But what amazed me was after I would speak to the women on the base, because often I was invited for Women's History Month or Black History Month, or I was there to do some leadership training or stress management. And what always intrigued me was at the end, the women would whisper in my ears and they would tell me stories about the stress. They would tell me stories about the violence that women experienced. And I was just startled and grieved that these women were experiencing these things, and it was so taboo to talk about it. They didn't feel comfortable bringing it to the floor. They had to whisper it in my ears. And I'm like, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do more than just pray? So when I learned that you have had experience with the PTSD, I wanted my audience to hear more about that. Those are what we call invisible wounds. And yes. I believe that today somebody may be watching, Stacey, that needs to be more informed about this whole experience, about the mental health of those that are in the military or retired from the military, or they're showing symptoms of PTSD. What was your experience with it, Stacey?
Well, unfortunately, and it wasn't the military that actually was what hurt me and what I experienced as being detrimental to my mental health at the time. I actually just happened to be in the military. However, it was one military young man and another civilian young man. And I was dating one at one time and had ended the relationship approximately 6 months and started a new relationship. And the person who I was dating, who was in the military at the time as well, shot the other young man while I was standing there.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Was it fatal?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
It wasn't.
But still, it must have been very traumatic. Was that the onset of you experiencing stress and trauma?
That necessarily wasn't the onset. So I think that was the breaking point, because I had experienced many traumas prior to that, being raped and sexual molestation and being just in bad relationships, mentally abusive. And so when that incident happened and it was 1984. So for me to talk about it in 2020 and still have it as something as it's if it happened yesterday.
Take your time, because I know that often when we bring up these scenarios, it can trigger some uncomfortable feelings.
It's a little uncomfortable. However, it is manageable, and I'm sure we'll get into the reasons why later. However, I did experience that, and it was pretty bad because I just didn't experience witnessing the shooting. I was kidnapped for 2 weeks afterwards.
My goodness.
And so this, and not just kidnapped, I was tormented by the shooter's friends, because the newspaper wrote it up as if it were a love triangle and made it seem as if I were this person who was trying to play these two men at the same time, which was so far from the truth.
My goodness.
And so I use that as a lesson to learn about media and what we see and what we read, that is not always completely accurate.
Now, how did you get out of that situation? How were you rescued, or did you just get away? I
believe the kidnapping was more mental than physical. The person was threatening that if I left and went away, that he would come after me. However, he let me go to the hairdresser. I will never forget this. The mother of the owner of the hair salon took me in the bathroom and prayed for me.
Oh.
She said, "There's something going on with you, baby." And
she knew.
And she said, "I'm just going to pray with you." And from that time, I just didn't go back to the house where he released me from. And
now, Stacey, how old were you then?
Oh boy. I'm not good at math. May need a calculator. I'm 55 now. So that was, like I said, that was in 94.
Okay.
So 2000. So that was.
So you were like in your 30s?
Yes, ma'am. 26 years ago, I was 29.
So this was before you had any children?
No, ma'am. I actually had my daughter. I had my daughter at 17 and my son at 25. And they actually were not necessarily taken from me, but I had friends that knew the situation. And my daughter was placed in a home with one of the sergeants that I worked with. And her mother took care of my daughter for about a year, because I was I couldn't even figure out what clothes to put on. And
so this happened while you were in the military?
Ma'am.
And what was your position? What was your role?
I was a staff sergeant at Fort Meade, and I was actually what they call the assistant NCOIC, which is the non-commissioned officer in charge. So at that time, because the shooter was in the military and under my chain of command, they did an investigation, and I almost lost my entire military career because of what somebody else did. So I had all of these factors compound on me. The military was doing an investigation, the police were doing an investigation, and I was the center of the investigation.
Was there any effort to handle your mental health, emotional health during that time, or did you just suit up and just get right back to work?
Basically, I suited up and went back to work, but it was after the 2 weeks, things just kind of fell like I don't want to say in line, but that's what happened, because I actually was going on leave the day, that was a Friday,
okay,
17th, 1994. And I went on leave starting that Monday for 2 weeks because I was supposed to go away. My daughter at the time was going to a summer camp program at Norfolk State University as a young girl, and she was so gifted and talented that they brought her out to the college, and it was perfect timing, actually, because she was able to leave and not be involved in all of the first parts of it. And so when she came back, that's when she went. My friend's mother took her when she returned back to Maryland, and my son at the time, he was living with his dad in North Carolina.
So how did the PTSD start to manifest in your life? Was it manifesting while you were still in service or afterwards?
All of the above.
Okay.
So in the beginning, I did have mental health counseling for probably about, I want to say it was probably about a month. And it was almost every other day because
Did you feel like it was adequate and helpful? Do you feel like it was, or was it just kind of mechanical and superficial? Did you feel like you were really getting some help and support?
I was not getting help that I needed. It was mainly just going in and sitting down and speaking with someone who wasn't actually a clinical person. This was another enlisted individual in a tech position, which in the military, sometimes that's big. We have people in positions as the frontline person that you see. And if they feel like you need to have some really serious help, then they'll get a psychologist or a therapist on board for you. So I remember going through some stages, and when I left the tech, I was at the stage of anger. And I remember him saying that was a good place for me to be.
Yeah, because you weren't numb.
Right. Because I was feeling the anger. I had gone through the sadness and the depression and the can't shut my mind off and can't get the sight of what happened out of my head. And so,
did they want to put you on medication, or was it talk therapy?
It was talk therapy. It was talk therapy because I did not see a psychiatrist at that time. It wasn't until later, after I had actually gotten out of the military, that I really began to spiral downward, because so many things were happening while I was in the military. You know, it's one of those things they instill in you that you can't fall apart. You had
to keep pushing it down, it down, denying it. Exactly. And separating yourself from it. You detach.
Exactly. And
you detach.
So those habits were learned And eventually I was no longer able to detach.
Do you think that's called like a false resiliency? Like, oh, I can do this, I can handle this,
Yes,
I can manage it. It's not real, authentic resiliency. It's just a maladaptation.
exactly.
Hmm.
You're not dead,
Right.
so you must keep going on. The mission must go on.
Mm,
Regardless
mm.
of whether you're fully capable of functioning in your mission, it must go on.
Now, did you ever connect with any other women while you were in service that experienced trauma so that you could somehow connect? Or did you just isolate and you just, was there a stigma, a taboo? You don't talk about it?
There was definitely a stigma, a
Mm,
lot of stigmas in the military of things you don't talk about.
mm,
It's really that family that says what happens in the house
yeah,
stays in the
yeah,
house. And
exactly. The secret.
right, you don't divulge, outside of the military what happened to you because that makes somebody else have to be accountable.
Exactly. I remember in one of my booklets I wrote, I think I posted it on Facebook too, is that there comes a point when we have to shake the family tree and let all the secrets fall out, all the
Mm-hmm.
stories, all of
Mm-hmm.
the things that we were suppressing, the things that
Right.
oppressed us, the things that depressed us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in order to break generational cycles and patterns, it's like somebody's got to tell the truth. Somebody's got to have a voice. And I think that is what has directed you and directed, and, or should I say, ordered your steps
Yes,
to
ma'am.
start your nonprofit organization. Isn't that the name of your nonprofit?
That is exactly the name. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Tell us the exact name of your
Um,
nonprofit.
it is Ordered Steps Incorporated.
Ordered Steps Incorporated. I'm
Yes,
so
ma'am.
glad that you are part of our tribe because you were able to connect with my business consultant who helped me structure our 501c3 Women on the Grow. So many of our sisters in our tribe have benefited from Favor Consulting, Alicia Barmore and Devin. So
Yes,
I'm so
ma'am.
glad that that has happened for you. So tell us, um, before we get into your mission with
Mm-hmm.
Ordered Steps,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that someone that is watching needs to hear and understand about this phenomena of PTSD, especially from a military experience or just from just being abused and
Mm-hmm.
exposed to violence? What is it that we don't understand? What is it that people are misunderstanding or overlooking or neglecting when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to dealing with PTSD?
I believe that the first misunderstanding is that we are a people who can't function in life
Hmm.
because we can. We just have to be provided the correct tools because
Okay.
it is a daily, um, I won't say struggle, but it is a daily cognitive process
Mm-hmm.
that you have to have tools in your pocket, purse, tool belt
What are some of
around.
your tools?
My biggest tool is what is called Socratic questioning,
Oh, yeah,
and
Socrates.
I take myself through a process. If I start to feel anxious, or I start to feel like I'm in danger, or I feel like sometimes the world is closing in on me
Hmm.
and can't breathe, have anxiety attacks. And so I ask myself the questions: are you in danger? Is what you're perceiving, is it real?
Is it real? Yeah, you
Is
have to
it
do with the facts, the
right?
reality.
Right. Is this something that you have, basically, I'll use a term, concocted up in your mind,
Hmm.
is this actually happening to you? And most of the time is no.
So I know that some people are triggered by sounds.
Yes.
What triggers you? Is it
Um,
pretty much the same, or it
it's
varies?
it can vary, but most of what triggers me is, and we all have stress sometimes every day.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are about 4 or 5 things happening at one time, I literally have to stop
Okay.
and take myself out of what's going on.
So when you're
And
feeling overwhelmed,
yes,
which that could be anyone that's watching today, they're
yes,
just feeling
yes,
overwhelmed. They're being a single
exactly.
parent, or they've got 2 or 3 jobs, or they've got, dealing with the bills, and they're caregiving for an elder parent, and they're dealing with the pandemic, and then they're dealing with their own illness, and they're dealing with the neighbors, and they're dealing with the ex.
Yes,
And then they're just
that
overwhelmed. So
right.
what would be a tool for them? I do know about the Socrates questioning. What would be another tool? Do you use affirmations? Is it a scripture? Is there a book? Do you use music? What are some of the other
use
tools?
a lot of the hopefully I will pronounce it correctly. It's the binaural sounds
Okay.
of meditation, and they come in different megahertz, and they first of all, I must back up and say, first of all, I stop and say, God, I need direction.
Yes.
So the first thing I do, I have to stop. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I stop my mind and breathe, because I have to be clear. Because if I'm panicking in my mind, I may not look like I'm panicking on the outside, but inside I'm just running amok. So I have
that's good that you mentioned that, Stacey, because that's something I want our audience to understand, is that people don't always look like what they're going through. It's an invisible wound. And you certainly don't look like you've been through all, and I'm sure I haven't heard everything that you've been through. But I always see that smile, and you're always pleasant, and you're always loving, and you're always giving. And so I want our audience to be keenly aware that a person that has invisible wounds doesn't always look wounded. Exactly. You don't see a cast. You don't see a Band-Aid. You don't see, you know what I mean? So when I
always say, keep in mind, when you are meeting or encountering a person or experiencing someone in your, in your area, in your environment, just always remember that you don't know what they had to go through before they got to you.
Right. So let's say I had someone in my life that I'm aware that they have PTSD. I don't know that, but I'm just saying, let's say I do know. And when I could tell they're inhabiting anxiety, what should I say? Should I say, oh, get over it, or you'll be all right? What is the proper way to be of comfort and support to someone when you actually know that they have this situation going on and it could pop off any time? Right. Sometimes we could say the wrong things. What is the most appropriate thing to say to someone so that you're being present with them, and supportive?
I think the get over it works for some people, but it's how you want to say it. But for the most, it's the tone. For the most part, I've had a very special coworker when I was in DC and I was working downtown, and it was in 2015, and life just really started to spiral. Somehow, she would just come and say, "You want to take a walk outside with me?"
That's nice.
And just the tone of the calmness of the voice would bring me down, literally off that ledge. And I would go and walk around the block. And
I like that.
Take in some deep breaths and look at the scenery and clear my mind of whatever it was that I thought was affecting me in that negative way.
So should someone who has this kind of front load and let people that are in their lives say, you know what, this is what would help me if you would say this? Would it be helpful if they would let them know the words, the suggestions that could be made, so they kind of front load it and the person knows, oh, this is what really works for her or him, and they are already prepared. They're proactive in letting the people they work with or that they love, this is what I need when you find that I'm spiraling.
Right. I believe that is it wasn't easy, but that is a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Because at one point I was a director at a hospital, and here I am having to go to their mental health
Yeah.
clinic.
Yeah.
And some of my staff were going to be the people who would have to check me in. So think about the person maybe feeling ashamed and embarrassed
Yes.
about it. But
Yes.
that's the part that we have to get past, those of us who have been diagnosed with this mental illness. We must get past the shame and the guilt, because there was nothing that we did that
Right.
would have changed the situation, or there was nothing that we did that caused it.
I'm glad you
So
said that, because that was going to be one of my questions is, do you find that most people don't ask for help? They just stay in a closet.
exactly. And isolation is the worst.
Mm.
Because during this time of the pandemic, I had to be very careful of how long I stayed in the house, because it's so easy for me to stay in the house
Yes.
and not connect with anybody. But I had to say, wait a minute, what's going on? Because then when I find myself, I'm starting to get irritated about the smallest little thing.
The smallest little thing.
The smallest little thing. And I had to pay attention to myself. I had to pay attention to my behavior and say, what is it that's causing you to feel this way? And then I had to say, oh, you need to go outside.
Yeah.
You need to walk.
Well, I just, I was counseling with a woman today who was in heavy grief. She has not left the house. She says, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm trying to let them know I'm okay, but I'm just in terrible grief. She lost her mother. And I was like, Lord, what do I say to her? Because as you said, that isolation is not healthy. But I was just wondering how you can encourage someone, that you're isolating, and it's very dangerous. And so I finally just said to her, tell me some good memories about your mom. And so as she started talking about her memories, she felt so much better. But there are a lot of people during this pandemic that were already suffering from, alienation, isolation, procrastination, all of that. And just introverted for whatever reason. It could be they've gone through divorce, or they lost their job, or many different reasons can create this sense of, I just don't want to be engaged with people. So what would you say to that person that's like, I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to leave. I'm scared of what's going to happen. Because we can leave. We just have to be safe. And we have to keep it at a minimum.
Exactly. And the biggest thing you just said, though, is that they said, I don't feel safe. And I have experienced that I would not go out my door because I didn't feel like it was safe on the other side.
I got you.
And that is, I believe, is going to take some time with proper counseling. That's what happened for me. I had to, and it was the hardest thing for me to even go out the door to go to counseling. But I had to, the counselor told me over the phone that I was worth it.
That's beautiful. So two things I want to discuss before we come to a close. This has been so informative. One is, after getting out of those toxic, abusive relationships, did you feel apprehensive about, entertaining the idea of being in another relationship? How did it affect your dating? How did it affect you feeling good about yourself? How did you deal with that?
Well, it definitely affected dating, because after even having the diagnosis, the diagnosis came later, but I was in a marriage that was mentally abusive, and I got divorced. And the first thing I said after the divorce was, I do not want to be in a relationship at all. I almost wanted to put never on it, but I didn't. But I had to work my way up to trusting human beings. And take the word out of my vocabulary that said, if I get into a relationship, it will always go bad. So I had to remove the
Yeah,
all.
that's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Yeah.
And that helped me to move forward and trusting people that they wouldn't hurt me. So, of course, things happen and people don't, you can be in a relationship with someone who may hurt you, but it's not intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also in that process, I learned to speak up for myself.
Good for you. Yeah.
Because in when you isolate, there's nobody that you have to speak up to. You're taking care of you. You think.
You think, yes.
You think. Yes. And there's nobody that you allow around you that was going to hurt you, so you don't have to worry about anything. But when you do start allowing people to come around you, you have to be able to say, when you do this, it makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And if they don't receive it, then that will let you know that that's probably somebody that you may not want to continue in a relationship with, close relationship.
And Stacey, that's good advice for anyone. That's just simply having boundaries, and valuing your peace of mind, your lifestyle, your experiences, the things that are important to you. That so someone that's watching today, please understand, you don't have to have PTSD diagnosis to be able to say, I need to have my voice and I need to be able to let others know that this is what's important to me and this is what I value. I mean, this is one reason why I have Women on the Grow for so many years, is because I too had to find my voice. And I have a lot of women in our tribe that's their story. I had to find my voice in my marriage, or I had to find my voice on the job, or I had to find my voice as a parent, or I had to find my voice from a toxic relationship with my parents or with my siblings, or some experiences of betrayal or abuse. So that's very key. I'm glad you brought that up. The other thing I wanted to touch upon is how you were able to turn your pain into a purpose with your ministry / nonprofit outreach called Ordered Steps. Tell us the focus and the intention of Ordered Steps. And I believe you're based in Long Beach, California?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Yes. Tell us about that, how you turned your pain into a purpose.
The pain was turned into a purpose when I allowed myself to heal. But then it was, okay, you can't just be healed and not help somebody else.
That's right.
You have to, I believe as human beings, we are here to give each other life. And at one point I could not do that. But when I discovered that I could be a life-giving source to somebody else, that alone helps me so much. Every day that I get to help somebody else, it helps me.
It's a great medication, isn't it?
Yes, it helps me to just continue to grow and develop and, move past. They have a new term now that's called PTSD. So it's post-traumatic stress growth. And now we grow even with whatever ailments or whatever, I call them idiosyncrasies that we have, because we all have. But when I help somebody else and I see them moving in a direction to fulfill purpose in their life, oh my goodness, it reminds me in the word where Jesus said, this is my meat. So This is my meat. This is how I am sustained. This is how I feel like there's substance. I am substantive in the earth. And that's all.
You are a blessing. And is your focus of veterans? Or is it just the general population of people that are diagnosed with PTSD or homelessness?
Mostly with homelessness.
Okay.
formerly incarcerated veteran women.
Oh,
Yes, homeless women and formerly incarcerated veterans, women that right now. And so though they are my focus. We train them. We help. I came up with a new slogan that we are building others to lead.
I love
And
that.
we, and because we are all leading somebody, but where you want to lead them to, good or bad, you have to make the choice. And we want to build others to lead a good life, to live a crime-free life, a drug-free life, but they have to have the right tools and the right training to get that, because all of the negative experience that we had that built up what we think we know about us, they have to be removed and replaced.
Reframed.
Yes.
And transformed by the renewing of their mind.
Yes.
and you know what I love about it is that you are targeting an invisible and forgotten community. That's very specific. That's a very specific target. Former veterans that were incarcerated while they were in the military or after they were in the military, or
at any time.
At any time. But the combination of being a veteran and there's a connection, I imagine, that when they come out of the military, if they can't find a job, if they have some health issues, it's difficult to get a job, and then therefore they find themselves homeless. So I see that there's a connection.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, incarceration is a big component to leading to homelessness.
So tell our audience how they can be a blessing to Ordered Steps, how they can send a donation. What are you seeking? What's on your wish list right now for Ordered Steps?
What's on my wish list right now for Ordered Steps is a building for transitional housing. And they can go to orderedstepsinc.org. orderedstepsinc.org, O-R-G.
All right.
As soon as you go on that first page, there is a donate button. And if you click it, it'll take you about 60 seconds to bless somebody's life. You can be the change for somebody.
Well, I'm going to be a part of that change and definitely make sure I do that. I am just so inspired by your resiliency, by your heart. You are a woman of God, and you don't look like what you've been through. And I know that it is a journey and it is a process, but what a joy to be able to watch you just blossom and transmute, not transfer the pain to somebody else.
Yeah, no.
Because that's what hurt people do. They hurt other people, or they help other people. And that's what you're doing. You're helping other people. And I just say, God bless you mightily.
Thank you.
Thank you for their time today, Stacey. I love the vibe of our tribe. I'm so honored that you are part of our Women on the Grow. Yes. Our ministry, as you know, is to embrace, encourage, and empower women that are experiencing all types of hardships. And so you've given me a glimpse, as well as my viewers today, a glimpse into another part of the world of women that need our love and need our support, not our criticism, not our cold shoulder. We need to see them and love them and be of support. So thank you for answering the call, my dear. Thank you. Is there any closing remark or anything that you'd like to share that we didn't cover before we close?
I'd just like to say that if you're hurting, please find your place to heal, because you don't want to continue to walk around that same mountain. We just want to, we're here to grow. We're created to grow. We're created to flourish. And that's just my prayer for everybody, that we all grow and flourish and become better human beings.
And I have your book. I ordered your book. Is your book on the website also?
My book is not on that website, but it is on Amazon.com.
So tell them the title of the book and how they can get it.
The title of one of the books is called don't let your brain go numb. And the premise of,
Oh, my,
and the
my
premise of the
camera's trying to
book,
fall.
right,
Okay, I'm
the premise
sorry.
of the book came from my experience with this mental health issue. And I was completely numb. I was completely desensitized to everything. I didn't feel
Mm,
happy. I didn't feel sad. I didn't care about anybody. I just was walking around in my own little bubble. But I liken it unto life will sometimes, you know, when you carry a baby and on your arm and
yes.
it's you put the baby down and you realize, oh, my arm is numb, and you got to go through all these gyrations to get the feeling to come back. Well, that's what happens with life sometimes. We put on so many things and it just gets way too heavy
Yes.
and we go numb. And you got to
Yeah.
start taking that stuff off and freeing yourself so that the circulation can come back to your heart and you'll
Woo, you
fulfill
better
your
go,
purpose.
girl. You know, I love analogies and metaphors. I love that. That is, I can see that. I understand it. And I hope that
Yes.
someone watching today is not only going to share this video message of my interview with Stacey Bullock, but they will perhaps get a glimpse into how they can be of a blessing to someone in their life that they work with or that they love, a friend, a family member, to be more sensitive and be
Mm-hmm.
more aware of how they can be of support. And also, maybe you need to understand that you have not overcome the stigma and the shame to say, I need help. I
Mm-hmm.
pray that if you need help, that you will take off that mask
Mm-hmm.
and you
Mm-hmm.
will reach out to people like Stacey. And Stacey, if you can give them your email, your website name, and your phone number, once again, for anyone to reach out to you, even though you're in Southern California, you are definitely a resource. And you're probably connected to other people in other
Yes.
states, maybe that you
Yes.
can refer them
Yes.
to.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So
Yes,
please
ma'am.
share that as we close.
Yes. My email is Stacey, it's Stacey at orderedstepsinc.org.
Mm-hmm.
And the telephone number is 562-480-7071. Or you can reach out to us on our website, which is orderedstepsinc.org.
Awesome. Well, I know what I'm going to do as soon as we get finished with this interview. I'm going to go make my donation to Ordered
Thank
Steps.
you. Thank you,
God
Miss
bless
Jill.
you.
Thank
I love
you.
you, honey.
Love you too. Thank you.